Guinea's opposition claims Sunday's presidential election was rigged and wants the results cancelled. In our health segment, researchers say antibiotic resistance is a serious problem in low and middle-income countries. And a Rwandan startup farm uses a mobile solar kiosk to provide low-cost phone charging, airtime sales and mobile money. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. First to West Africa, opposition candidates are calling for Guinea's presidential election to be annulled, saying the vote Sunday was rigged to favor incumbent leader Alpha Conde. The 7 opposition candidates held a news conference Monday to denounce the poll as a grand deception. The candidates, including former Prime Minister Cellou Dalein Diallo, Conde's main challengers said they had recorded a number of irregularities in the voting, including falsified results, ballot box staffing and intimidation, and arrest by security forces. There has been no independent confirmation of the accusations. Western diplomats said some polling stations did not have enough envelopes for the ballots or were issued lists of voters that were not in alphabetical order. But he added that it is too soon to say this amounted to the level of fraud alleged by the opposition. Preliminary results from the vote are expected later this week.
The security society in Masquerade.
The election was a charade, a massive mistake that went on all today and is still going on at the vote tallying centers. We truly cannot accept this vote. We want it annulled and we will not accept the result.
Now for the latest on the situation in Guinea, viewers Chris Stein joins me via phone from Conakry. Chris, describe the mood in Conakry today.
Well, everything's pretty normal here. Shops are open. People are on the street. Even some of the markets that were attacked earlier in the week and looted, there were shoppers back there, although they weren't completely open. In general, life, at least in the capital and the parts I've been to, seems to be going on.
Now, what's going on in terms of the dispute by the opposition? They want this election to be cancelled, or rather the results. That hasn't caused any tensions, apparently. So what's happening? Are they talking to the Electoral Commission?
I can't say whether or not there's anything, between the Electoral Commission and the opposition candidates. What I can say is that right now we're having a number of public statements. We've already heard the side of the opposition. They think the election should be annulled and was fraudulent. The European Union had a press conference this morning where they agreed that there were logistical problems and with the election, such as out-of-order voter lists, lack of envelopes for the ballots. But the head of the observation mission told me that he did not feel that the election was not free and fair from what he'd seen and characterized it essentially as free and fair. So obviously we're going to be hearing from a few more observation missions in the next few days. What I expect next will be once results start being announced and we get an idea of who was indeed the strongest candidate. That's when we'll be seeing the next moves, both from the president and his political party, as well as the opposition candidate.
So, ideally, what is the next move for the opposition? Perhaps a court, or what else are they talking about?
They have said that they've talked about demonstrations. I have no doubt that they will, or I have no doubt that they're at least considering whether or not to take legal action. Right now, they are making a number of appeals internationally. Cellou Dalein Diallo, the main opposition challenger, just sent out a video that I understand, and as well as a statement where I understand he calls upon the international community to kind of support his position. So it's both going to be a fight the opposition seems to want to wage both inside Guinea and abroad.
Well, we just hope there will be peace. Chris, thank you very much. Viewers, Chris Stein reporting live from Conakry in Guinea. Not too far from there now, during the height of the Ebola outbreak, an estimated 5 million children and youth were denied access to education in Guinea, Liberia and Sierra Leone as schools were forced to close down. Eventually, most schools opened early this year and students went back to the classrooms. Although the crisis has passed, the effects of the epidemic are still present. Now, the World Health Organization has called on the countries to remain vigilant, especially after new cases were reported months after officials thought Ebola have been finally stamped out. Now, VOA's Jackson Vunganyi is visiting 2 of the 3 West African countries that were seriously affected by Ebola, as Liberia and Sierra Leone, to assess how the countries are recovering and particularly how schools coped and their efforts to spring back to normal. Jackson now joins me live via phone from Freetown, Sierra Leone. Hello, Jackson.
Hello, Vincent.
Now, tell us, today you are actually visiting a particular school. Tell us what has been going on around the schools in those countries that you visited.
Vincent, I came back from Monrovia yesterday, where I visited a school that had been closed for about 7 months. Students are back to school now. They lost quite some time, and they're trying to catch up with their education. There's some precautions that have been implemented in schools now. You find sanitizers, buckets. You have to wash your hands before you get into class. There's a better consciousness among them that this is a threat that is still continuing, but they feel like the bad days are behind them. Now, this morning I was in Freetown in a school that was also used as a testing center. The grounds were used as testing and treatment centers here in downtown Freetown. The students are going to school. Life seems that has gone back to normal.
Yes.
They did not have any casualties among the student population. The school administrators are quite proud that their school played a role in the recovery efforts. The field that we stood on acted as an Ebola transmission unit recovery point. There were morgues. Things were quite gruesome at the height of the crisis,
now,
but things have kind of gotten back to normal.
And that's good news. Now, Jackson, in terms of the impact on the academic programs, what are the teachers telling you? How are they going to make up for all those months that were lost while the schools were closed?
I think they were able. I spoke to a couple of students who say that during the lockdown, at the time when they were not in school, they were able to catch up with their education because they were exchanging materials between themselves, and they had been encouraged to continue reading. They had reading materials. They feel like they missed out on some of the things that they were supposed to learn. But overall, the school where I was, the head teacher told me that the school was actually the top in the national examination, so that this was not something that really affected the students and their academics and their capacity to do well in school.
In about 10 seconds, how is the psychological state of those kids as they go back to school?
Well, everybody seems to be normal right now. Things have returned to normal in Freetown and in Monrovia, where I've been. You don't get the sense that there's a fear as much, but when you speak to them, they tell you the past couple of months, 4 months down the road, 4 months back, that things were not the way they were.
Okay.
There was a lot of fear in the community. It was very palpable.
Jackson, thank you. Thank you very much. We do appreciate your reporting there. Viewers, Jackson Vunganyi reporting live from Freetown in Sierra Leone. To the Middle East now, an escalation. Israeli police said there were more stabbings Tuesday, a day after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel will overcome knife terror. One of the attacks involved a pair of Palestinian men boarding a bus in Jerusalem and shooting and stabbing passengers in Jerusalem's Amman Anativ area. The 2 other attacks occurred almost simultaneously elsewhere in Jerusalem. At least 5 Israelis have been killed and 20 wounded in a series of stabbings and other attacks by Palestinians during the past 2 weeks. 25 Palestinians have been killed, mostly by Israeli police responding to the attacks and by soldiers firing at Palestinian protesters throwing rocks and firebombs. Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Coming up, researchers say antibiotic resistance is a serious problem in low and middle-income countries. Stay with us.
Greenbeat, for a healthier planet.
Farm animals are among the world's biggest polluters. Cow dung, for example, contains about 60% methane.
Manure is the ultimate recycling product.
Bill Harkey is with Rosendale Dairy Farm in Wisconsin and says the company is dedicated to sustainability. Rosendale has partnered with the biogas company to turn the manure's methane into electricity.
The majority of our manure goes to the biodigester, and they will take the gases out of it that they can turn into green energy, and then we will get the manure back.
And from that comes another byproduct.
We bring in a lot of recycled products to feed the cows, if you will, and the cows in turn will produce a very nutrient-rich fertilizer.
Rosendale cuts its carbon footprint even further by delivering the fertilizer through a nearly 13-kilometer-long pipeline.
That's helped us reduce the number of truck rolls by about 40,000.
And the cows, well, they seem pretty content with the whole thing. I'm Rebecca Ward for VOA's Green Beat.
Welcome back. Now, a big deal is brewing in the beer industry, and U.S. oil refiners are looking to West African suppliers once again. With more on that and the rest of the day's business headlines, we're joined by VOA's Alexis Christophorous in New York. Alexis.
Thanks, Vince. It looks like the fourth time was a charm for Anheuser-Busch InBev. The brewer sweetened its takeover offer for rival SAB Miller to $104 billion, and the British South African company has agreed to the buyout in principle. The deal is expected to undergo intense scrutiny from antitrust reviews in both the U.S. and the European Union. The new company would be headquartered in Belgium. If the deal goes through, the combined company would be responsible for 1 out of every 3 beers sold worldwide. U.S. oil refineries are turning back to old suppliers in West Africa as the growth in shale production slows. The number of barrels of West African crude shipped to the U.S. is now at its highest level in about 2 years. That says strong refining margins and attractive prices have seen U.S. plants snap up cargoes. And new data shows that in addition to U.S. crude oil imports from Nigeria and Angola, the U.S. has recently taken more cargoes from smaller producers such as Cameroon and Gabon. Botswana is proposing bold economic stimulus after the price of diamonds dropped sharply. Diamonds account for about 75% of Botswana's foreign exchange earnings and 30% of GDP. But gem diamond demand has slowed because middlemen who buy rough stones have struggled with the stronger dollar and liquidity problems. The southern African country is expected to post a budget deficit this year and next. Botswana will use some of its $8.5 billion in foreign exchange reserves to stimulate the economy by targeting tourism, agricultural production, construction, and manufacturing. Vincent?
Now, Alexis, people across Africa are still excited about the announcement sometime back by Facebook that is going to launch this satellite that will provide free internet access to many across the region. What does this really mean, particularly for young entrepreneurs, startups across the continent?
Well, the Facebook Eutelsat deal is expected to provide employment and sustainable development in the information and communication technology sector for about 48 sub-Saharan African countries. In Nigeria, IT experts place the number of effective ISP companies at just 10 or less. ISP companies are responsible for providing, distributing, and regulating internet access to individuals and organizations. So the arrival of Facebook will likely bring a lot of attention to the poor output of the numerous ISP companies in the country, and it may also result in increased competition as those ISPs struggle to maintain their customer base in the face of a stronger competitor like Facebook. Vincent?
Alexis, thank you very much for your reporting.
Sure.
Alexis Christophorous, business correspondent, coming to us live from New York. Well, joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu. What do you have for us today, Lino?
Hello, Vincent. Well, experts are raising the alarm on the growing antimicrobial resistance of worldwide diseases.
Researchers at the Center for Disease Dynamics, Economics and Policy, CDDEP, say there are alarming rates of bacteria resistant to last resort antibiotics. The findings were released via CDDEP's resistance map, an interactive online tool tracking the latest global trends in drug resistance in 39 countries and antibiotic use in 69 countries. The data show that antibiotic resistance is a serious problem in low and middle income countries. Recently, G7 health ministers meeting in Berlin spoke of the urgent need to fight growing antimicrobial resistance to worldwide diseases.
Hier steht oben an das Thema Antibiotika.
On top of the list, there is the issue of antibiotic resistance. We have seen an increase of more than 35% in human medicine from 2000 to 2010 alone. And only in every 4 countries there are some strategies dealing with the issue of resistance.
Antimicrobial resistance happens when microbes start developing immunity to medication, making it harder to treat and prevent infection. This has led to the rise of superbugs, which are resistant to multiple antibiotics and can travel quickly across borders. Dr. Margaret Chan, Director General of the World Health Organization.
Now, we do feel that we support the appropriate use of antibiotics to treat sick people or to treat sick animals. But the use of antibiotics as a growth promoter is something we discourage countries to take steps to exit gradually, because at the end of the day, the antibiotic residual in the meat, in the seafood that you are buying will also, give you, over time, the problem.
Es ist klar, Krankheiten kennen keine Grenzen.
The question of effectiveness of antibiotics depends on behavior in our country, but also from a worldwide effort.
Medical experts say gonorrhea is now resistant to multiple classes of drugs, while a multi-drug resistant typhoid fever has been found in parts of Asia and Africa. The German government has announced 50 million euros in funding towards developing antimicrobial resistant medications together with the G7.
Joining us in our studio for more on the subject is Ellen Gelben, Associate Director of the Center for Disease Dynamics, Economics and Policy, CDEP. Ms. Gelben, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
So you were one of the researchers who actually conducted this research on the state of the world's antibiotics. Tell us about your findings in terms of what is happening in sub-Saharan Africa in particular.
Yes, all over the world.
Okay. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Well, we have been working a program called the Global Antibiotic Resistance Partnership, including Southern and East African countries since about 2009. So we've been working with people and have found that, contrary to what you often hear, there really are good data. Nobody has gone out and tried to scour and find them and really put them all together, which is what we've done. And what you find is that everywhere you look, yes, antibiotic resistance is increasing and antibiotic use is also increasing.
But what are the issues here? Because when you look at the way antibiotics are being regulated in different countries, most of the time, at least from what I know, you need a prescription. The doctor will give a prescription, or the doctor will use it for a patient. So what are the issues? What have you found?
Well, a couple of things. It's true that almost every country in the world has a prescription law, but I think you probably know that there are an awful lot of countries you can go to, especially in sub-Saharan Africa and in Asia, where you can buy an antibiotic over the counter from a pharmacy or a drug shop or even just a roadside kiosk. So that's part of it. But, another thing you mentioned, yes, the doctor gives you a prescription. Well, it turns out that doctors are not always the best antibiotic stewards either. And we estimate that about half of the antibiotics used, even from a doctor's prescription, are probably unnecessary. And they're for things like colds and sniffles that are caused by viruses that wouldn't be cured by an antibiotic.
A lot of times
things.
people tend to think, oh, I don't feel well, I have a cold, let me use an antibiotics. And you're really mentioning something very important. Now, quickly, before we go, what national level strategies can help countries combat antibiotic resistance?
Well, there are a few things. One, they can increase the use of vaccines and sanitation and things like that. Some of the footage that we saw shows you conditions where disease spreads quite rapidly. So one thing you can do, which is the best thing for everyone, is to prevent more disease. But you can also have rules in hospitals that, even though hospitals only use about 20% of the antibiotics, there are a lot of really sick people there, and they transmit disease pretty quickly. And we know some of the very simple things that you can do to improve that. But probably underlying everything, the most important thing is government involvement and really, making sure that they know it's really important, and that's happening finally.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gelbin. That's all the time we have. With us today was Ellen Gelbin, Associate Director, Center for Disease Dynamics, Economics, and Policy. And that's our Africa Health Report for today. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Lenore. Now, be sure to watch for Lenore Mudu every Tuesday and Thursday for the latest health news in Africa, right here on Africa 54. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. A Rwandan startup firm uses a mobile solar kiosk to provide low-cost phone charging, airtime sales, and mobile money. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Somalia, a cargo plane carrying supplies for African Union troops makes emergency landing near Mogadishu. And a South African court will rule on whether minors suffering from debilitating lung disease can launch a class action lawsuit against the industry. In Madagascar, a criminal court sentences 2 citizens to hard labor for life for the murder of a French couple in 2012. The president of Guinea-Bissau forms a new government and cabinet, ending a 2-month political crisis. Finally, in Botswana, the government is planning to expand trade from diamond industry as price of the gem drops globally. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back. Now, a Rwandan startup firm that uses a mobile solar kiosk to provide low-cost phone charging, airtime sales, and mobile money transfers is generating interest and rapidly becoming the leading distributor of renewable energy solutions to rural and urban communities. VOA's Paul Ndiho recently caught up with the founder and has our report.
Henry Nyakarundi is a Rwandan innovator who has developed a cutting-edge technology which offers a one-stop shop for mobile phone users looking for low-cost and convenient charging services.
We developed a patented technology called mobile solar kiosk, which is basically to deliver key services to the end user, to people at the base of the pyramid. And the key services we deliver is charging small electronics.
Nyakarundi grew up in Burundi and moved to the United States in 1996 to pursue further studies in computer science. After graduation, he ventured into other business pursuits, including transportation and real estate development. In 2013, he returned to his native country, Rwanda, to start ARID, a grassroots social enterprise that empowers the local community.
We can do charging, we can sell airtime, we can do mobile money, and very soon we'll be able to do data connectivity to the end user.
ARID makes use of a franchise model for its kiosks, allowing people with little capital to start their own businesses. Started under the African Renewable Energy Distribution, ARID is already making their mark on the global stage. The tech firm has so far attracted both national and international attention, winning the American Society for Mechanical Engineers Innovation Award, a global competition for hardware-led social ventures.
And we're using a franchise business model to promote entrepreneurship at the base of the pyramid. And we're planning to have 100,000 kiosks all across Africa through different partnerships.
As an experienced entrepreneur, Nyakarundi knew a good opportunity when he saw one. And he's part of a talented group of Rwandans trying to find homegrown solutions to some of the problems Rwandans are facing. He says that thinking outside of the box is what drove him to be innovative. Where do you manufacture this from?
China, of course,
China.
like everybody else, China. So we do the design in Rwanda, we design the technology in Rwanda, but the manufacturing is done in China. But in the future, part of the parts will be done in Africa.
Despite the challenges, the young entrepreneur is focused on perfecting his brainchild. Furthermore, Arid has partnered with Airtel to offset the cost of the kiosk.
Plug it in. And there you go. Let's charge.
Arid is already planning to expand the brand and sell on the local market in Burundi, South Sudan, and Uganda.
I built this business to have a social impact, number one.
Okay.
And when you work at the end user with the BOP, the base of the pyramid, their revenue is so small. They make between $2 to $5 a day, so they can't afford this kiosk. So I had to create a model where partnership was key.
Tech analysts say Rwanda's fast-growing population and rapid urban development means there are more people likely to use the technology. Therefore, having a mobile smart solar kiosk could ease the burden of people in rural areas with no access to electricity. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
Very, very smart idea there. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. Now, for more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC. And in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, that is Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. And from all of us in Washington, we wish you a good night and see you next time.
At stake is the basic human right of the woman and child.
This is a struggle against humanity, and we all need to join hands and do what we can do.
Women are not being heard, so we need to be doing a lot more.
A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. I'm Sally Field, and I believe women are the best agents of change. These women from around the world are leading the way to challenge the status quo and motivate the next generation.
Let's move on and take a step in this journey.
Access to preventive care information and access to health care is a fundamental right.
It really makes me think about how I can contribute to the next generation.
These women bring us one step closer to realizing women's rights as human rights. Only on VOA.